Hello, I'm Jason Kelly. Thank you for joining me. In this video, I'll look at whether the Trump administration stands a chance of reaching its 3% economic growth goal. On the campaign trail, then candidate Trump said he was going to get the U.S. economy to an annual growth rate of 5%. Once he was in office and met with his whole team, the team dialed that down to a 3 to 4% economic growth goal. 3% is actually very ambitious. It seems low, but it's not. The United States hasn't grown at 3% for more than 10 years. It grows at an annual rate of about 2.1% over the past decade, and going forward, it's going to stay right about there. For data on this, we turn to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, who predicts a long-term growth rate of about 2%. And the reasons they cite for this are slower growth of eligible workers and a declining productivity rate. Those are the two inputs into the growth rate. So have a look at these charts. These are from the Wall Street Journal 3 years ago. We're going to have current ones in a second here, but just to give some perspective. This is a chart from 3 years ago. The Wall Street Journal used data from the John Burns Real Estate Consulting Group. And this chart shows a declining labor pool. You can see going all the way back to 1981, the growth of the labor market was a little below 2.5%, about 2.4%. That went down to about 1.4% in the 1980s, and early 1990s it got back up above 2% or so. Kind of went along there, but the main part to look at is from about the turn of this century. It peaked recently at about 2.4% again in 2001, and has been declining ever since. Look at that sharp ramp down on the right side of the chart. The dotted line shows what the projection was going forward, which is down to almost zero, really, as we get into 2025. The potential long-term growth rate of the economy takes the sum of two parts, this workforce growth plus productivity growth. And that makes sense. If you have a pool of workers, say you have 10 workers, and each one has a certain output of, let's say, 10, just to put a number on it so we can measure it. If you take the workforce up to 12 workers and the productivity goes up to 12, well, then you've got a lot more output going on. If you get them up to 15 workers and the productivity rises, and then 20 workers and the productivity rises, you have both factors going up. So, of course, output, productivity, economic results are going to be going in the right direction. But if one or both of these factors are shrinking, then things are going in the other undesirable direction. This is not hard to follow, and there are really only these two components. Let's look closer at them. The Wall Street Journal again published these two components, the workforce growth and productivity growth, in twin charts in May of 2017. So now we're up to current data. As you're looking at these, let me give you a little background. The Congressional Budget Office did say they expect a 0.5% annual growth rate in the next decade, with productivity at 1.3%. Put those together, you get growth of 1.8%. And by the way, that's the about 2% figure I mentioned earlier. Now, these charts, using data from the Labor Department, published by the Wall Street Journal, show on the left growth of the prime working age population and how it has been slowing as baby boomers age. As the working population gets older and retires and stops working, it's going down, and it's not being replaced. So that's the first input into the growth factor, going down. We're having fewer workers year after year. And the chart on the right shows productivity growth has fallen off in recent years as well, showing weaker investment and innovation. And I would add other factors that are not included here, but for whatever reason, productivity growth is also going down. Look back in the late 1960s and early 1970s, it was up above 3.5%, and that got down to 1% in the early 80s. It went back up to 3% before the subprime mortgage crash, and then it's gone down since then, and we're down around 1% right now. So, both factors are falling. Now, turning back to the CBO's estimate of 0.5% growth in the workforce going forward, let's see what the Trump administration has to do with the only factor economists think it has to work with, and that's the productivity side of this. If the workforce is going to go along at a constant 0.5% growth rate, and Trump wants to get this up to 3% in aggregate, that means he's got to boost the productivity side in order to get up to 3% or more than that. Here is a chart published by the Wall Street Journal in May, that same article. Notice in light blue at the bottom, the labor force growth rate is constant. We have a base of light blue we have to build on top of with the darker blue, and that's the productivity growth rate. So they have three scenarios here. The baseline forecast gets us up to a little below 2%, nowhere close to the 3% that the Trump team wants to reach. Weaker productivity, of course, gets us down lower. And then with a lot stronger productivity, maybe we can get up to that 3% growth rate that is the holy grail of this administration. The takeaway from this is that that dark blue bar is all the Trump team has to work with. Productivity must go up. Let's think about that. What can be done to boost productivity? All the trends are going the wrong direction. We find a workforce that's not only shrinking, but less motivated than in the past. The instances of people failing job applications because of testing positive for substance abuse are rising, especially in states that have legalized marijuana. So the acceptance of drug use and the rising incidence of drug use is crimping the workforce's quality. And employers are not relaxing their standards. I mean, you can't have just the same way they couldn't relax the standards for legal alcohol consumption on the work. Even though it's legal in society to consume alcohol, you can't have drunk people working certain jobs, nor can you have high people working certain jobs. But the incidence of drug use, testing positive on tests, is going up all the time. Education results are dropping as well. So what are we supposed to invest in? Education, training, drug rehabilitation programs. It's hard to get productivity higher for this group of people, which is already a shrinking pool. So what are they going to do? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows yet. But what's happening at the same time, separate from efforts to increase productivity from the workforce, is that automation is kicking in. And automation is kicking in just as employers have almost had it with the human workforce they're stuck with these days. We're talking about robots and algorithms. This is a trend that is on the rise, and it's not going to be, at least in the near term, a robot walking in on 2 feet to take over in the office. It's going to be things like robotic arms on assembly lines, software writing articles for newspapers, crunching numbers that accountants might have done previously. It's going to be that type of automation that creeps in. And employers are going to choose that kind of automation over human workers more and more and more. And the reasons are obvious. Productivity goes up, complaints go down, defects go down. Every study that has shown a human workforce replaced with a mechanized workforce has given those results: higher productivity, higher reliability, and lower defects. Of course, employers are going to go in that direction, and that will help productivity. I mean, these machines can work 24 hours a day, right? That alone will help productivity. When their work is that much higher quality with lower incidence of defect, that's going to help productivity and output. But to what benefit for the people involved? We may grow that dark blue bar, we may exceed 3%, 4%, who knows what we'll get to, but where will the benefit of this economic performance go? It's going to go to a shrinking slice of people at the top who own those robot-run businesses. That's the situation as it stands. It's going to be very hard for Team Trump to hit 3% growth, period, trying to boost productivity in any way. Through government policy, I just don't know what could possibly pull it off, and so far no economist seems to know what could pull that off. So businesses will probably take this into their own hands by automating more and more and more. And the problem with that is the benefits of the economic growth will not go to the people involved in the economy, at least not enough of them. I don't have any answers. Nobody does right now. This is a tough nut to crack. The thing for you to do at this stage is be aware of how challenging these high economic growth targets are and the factors that are making them challenging. This will help you better discern political campaign promises in the future and policy proposals that will come from people in charge of making this happen. I hope this has helped inform your view of the subject. If you're a Kelly Letter subscriber, I will see you Sunday with more good, helpful information like this. If you're not yet a subscriber, I would love to see you on the list. Thanks for watching.